I sat there, frozen in shock at what I was seeing. The camera angle was odd, positioned on a flat surface directly facing the bed, slightly tilted to the right. The contents of the video obscured the exact placement of the recording device, but the real question was, how did this end up among my other tapes? That unmarked cassette was supposed to have a recorded show from last week, something I had planned to watch later. I had expected entertainment, but instead, I got the biggest shock of my life. It was Monday evening, and at 6:15 the doorbell rang. I opened it to see my cousin, Ralph, standing there. It was unusual since I typically didn't get home until after midnight, but I assumed he had just forgotten my schedule. I invited him in, handed him a beer, and we settled in to watch Monday Night Football. He seemed a little disappointed that my wife Lois wasn't home. She had called earlier around 5, telling me she'd be going out for drinks with her co-workers after work. She also hinted at something special for when she returned. I was more than ready. It had been over 3 weeks since we last made love. Lately, Lois had been distant, always complaining of exhaustion, headaches, or stress from work. After a while, Ralph said he had to leave. I walked him to the door, said goodbye, and checked the time. Only 8 p.m. I grabbed another beer and settled in front of the TV. Sometime later, I woke up in my recliner. The alcohol had relaxed me enough to doze off, which wasn't usual for me. Standing up, I noticed our Yukon parked in the driveway. Lois had come home, yet she hadn't woken me. I wondered why, especially given her earlier promise. Smiling, I headed to the bedroom, anticipating the night she had hinted at. I climbed into bed, pressed myself against her, and reached out to cup her breast. She stirred slightly, then drifted back to sleep. Disappointed but determined, I tried to rouse her with gentle touches, hoping to spark some interest. After a while, she started responding, pressing against me. Just as I thought things were going in my favor, she reached back, grasped me, and then immediately released me like I was something repulsive. "Oh, it's just you," she muttered groggily. A wave of anger surged through me. What did she mean, just you? Who else had she expected? Furious, I got out of bed, grabbed my shorts and stormed downstairs. I needed to cool down. Sitting on the veranda, I stared at the stars, replaying the moment in my mind. The words cut deeper than any insult. For the first time in our marriage, I questioned everything. Were her nights out really just with the girls? My thoughts shifted. How could I afford a private investigator? But then something else struck me. She hadn't even tried to explain herself. No excuses, no attempts to smooth things over. It was as if she knew I had figured it out and simply didn't care. I went back inside, deciding to distract myself with TV. I searched for the tape of NCIS I had recorded last week, found it and popped it into the VCR. But what played on the screen wasn't NCIS. It was something else entirely. I hit pause, then quietly crept upstairs to check on Lois. She was still asleep, snoring softly. I went back downstairs and pressed play. The video revealed everything. My wife, my cousin, together in our bedroom, passionately embracing. From the camera angle, I deduced the device was hidden on the top shelf of our wardrobe. They moved like they had done this before. My stomach twisted as I watched them undress each other. Then when Lois pulled down his boxers, my jaw nearly hit the floor. Ralph was massive, far bigger than me. Lois reacted with sheer desire, her words confirming my worst fears. "Oh God, please hurry up," she begged him. Then he glanced at the camera, smirked and wiggled his eyebrows like it was some sick joke. My world crumbled. How many times had this happened? With how many men? I felt disgusted, betrayed, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I had spent years insecure about my size, but now I realized the truth. It wasn't that I was too small. She was just used to something far beyond normal. A sudden gasp behind me made me turn. Lois stood there, pale, her hands trembling. "Oh God, and oh God," she chanted, rushing to grab the phone. She frantically dialed a number, repeating under her breath, "Answer, answer, damn it." Then she screeched into the phone, "Ralph, Dave knows. He found the damn tape. Why the hell didn't you take it with you?" So that was it. My missing NCIS tape had been swapped with this monstrosity. I snatched the phone from her. "Ralph, you better pray I never see you again." And if I do, it'll be the worst day of your miserable life." I hung up and turned to Lois. "Thanks to you two, I don't need to hire a private investigator. You recorded all the evidence for me." I ejected the tape, held it up and kissed it mockingly before setting it on the TV. Lois, her voice shaking, whispered, "What are you going to do?" "What do you think? I'm divorcing your sorry ass." "But I don't want a divorce." "Why not? Clearly I'm not enough for you. Shouldn't you be thrilled to get rid of someone who doesn't meet your needs?" She stood frozen, tears welling in. Her eyes. "Pack your bags," I snapped. "Get the hell out before I lose my temper." She bolted upstairs. The moment she was gone, I grabbed a blank tape, swapped it onto the TV, and hid the incriminating one in the kitchen. I brewed coffee and sat at the table, making a to-do list for the morning. Luckily, our house was mine alone, a gift from my parents. I had considered adding Lois's name to the deed, but procrastination had saved me. Now I could ensure she got nothing. At around 2 a.m. I heard her leave. I didn't care where she went. Funny how love could turn to hate in mere seconds. Yesterday I would have died for this woman. Now I wouldn't even spit on her to put out a fire. Walking through the living room, I noticed something. The blank tape was gone. Lois had taken it, believing she had destroyed the evidence. I smiled to myself. Oh, how wrong she was. I had hoped Lois assumed she had the tape and wouldn't watch it. If things had gone as expected, I could have broken up with her cleanly. Instead, I went straight to my office, transferred all but $10 from our joint account to my private savings, and cancelled the joint credit cards. My personal American Express and Visa remained untouched. Satisfied with my financial safeguards, I went to bed and slept surprisingly well. The next morning, I arrived at the bank as soon as it opened, secured a private safe deposit box, and moved everything Lois had access to into my new one. At work, my secretary Myra informed me Lois was desperately trying to contact me. I instructed her to ignore any further messages. Soon after, my boss called me in, needing me on the next flight to Atlanta. I tried to refuse, explaining I needed to get a restraining order and change my locks, but he assured me everything would be handled in my absence. Trusting his lawyer, Bert Ellsworth, I left for Atlanta. Before my flight, I called Ellsworth and explained the situation. I fabricated a story about Lois and her lover, Ralph, threatening me. It was a lie, but if it kept Lois away, it was worth it. Ellsworth assured me the restraining order would be easy to secure. The business trip was quick. Within an hour, I secured the contract. My boss informed me that the house locks had been changed, and his brother-in-law, a deputy sheriff, would watch over the property. I paid a courtesy visit to some clients and caught my evening flight home. Upon arrival, the deputy met me, confirming Lois had tried to get into the house twice, furious at being locked out. Once inside, I ignored my blinking answering machine and went straight to bed. The next day, Myra invited me to lunch, sensing I needed support. She handed me a list of women interested in me. Surprisingly, Liz Fisher, a beautiful redhead from accounting, was on the list. Her engagement had just ended. I joked about Myra not being on the list, and she revealed she was cheating on her husband for revenge. This intrigued me. Emotionally, I wasn't ready for anything serious, but Myra offered a no-strings-attached arrangement, exactly what I needed. Later, Ellsworth confirmed Lois had been served with divorce papers. At 2:45, my phone rang. It was Lois. She was enraged. About the restraining order, the credit card cancellations, and being locked out. I coldly explained she no longer lived there and had no claim to the house. Desperate, she insisted we meet. I agreed, but on my terms. Tomorrow at a restaurant, not at home. That evening I went to a bar for some laughter therapy. A fiery redhead bartender, Karen, whom I'd harmlessly flirted with for years, was as gorgeous as ever. I watched stand-up comedians, letting the humor temporarily ease my troubles. The next day, before even sitting at my desk, Myra reminded me of our lunch appointment. At 11:15 we left for the Marriott. As I registered us as Mr. and Mrs. Ralph Tomlinson, I smirked. Using Lois's lover's name for my first affair post-marriage seemed fitting. Myra, undressing faster than I expected, was eager, and for the first time in a long while I felt truly free. "Dave, until you saw this post, didn't you say we had a good marriage?" "Maybe good, but certainly not great." Well, I dated Ralph before. We got married, and it didn't affect our marriage at all. You slept with my Turkai's cousin before we even agreed? Yes, I slept with him. Then why the hell did you even bother marrying me? Because I love you, Dave. I barely even like Ralph. Then why the hell are you sleeping with him? Because he gives me something physically inaccessible to you, size, Dave. All Ralph has is size. He reaches places inside me that you can't. Those places give me feelings that you can't provide. Why don't you look at it like Ralph is just helping you with me? You must be completely out of your mind if you think you can convince me of this. If that's all you wanted to talk about, then we're done here. I started to get up, but she said, You'll never be able to prove adultery, Dave. You don't have any evidence to support this. You're forgetting that I have the tape you and Ralph so kindly made for me. You're sure? Of course I'm sure, I said, walking away. I smiled as I left. Apparently she hadn't checked the tape she took from home. She didn't realize it, and was blank. I was reaching for my car door when I heard the click-click of high heels behind me. Turning around, I saw Lois, half walking, half running toward me. I need to get into the house. I need my clothes and stuff. I knew I was being an ass when I responded, but I felt justified. Have your lawyer call mine to sort everything out, I said, getting into my car. I rolled down the window. Bye-bye. Lois, she screamed after me. Wait, Dave, wait a minute. I could have let her in to get her things. It wouldn't have hurt me. But at the time I was thinking, screw this. If she didn't already have a lawyer, it would take her a couple of days to find one. By then, I'd have all her things packed, in trash bags, and I wouldn't be careful about it. If I was lucky, she'd have to take it all to the laundromat before she could use anything. Was I a little angry toward Lois? No. When it came to Lois and me, everything was sunshine and roses. Slept well that night. John had always been a faithful husband, or so Emily believed. Their marriage was built on trust, laughter and shared dreams. But lately Emily had sensed a shift, late-night calls, secretive texts, and a growing emotional distance. Her intuition screamed that something was wrong. One evening, as John was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Emily hesitated but picked it up. A message from an unknown number read, I miss you already, can't wait to see you again. Her heart pounded. The walls of their once happy home seemed to close in on her. She felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could he betray her after everything? Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to follow him the next day. John had told her he was working late, but instead of heading to the office, he drove to an upscale restaurant. Sitting by the window, he wasn't alone. A woman, younger and striking, reached across the table, touching his hand intimately. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but she steadied herself. Storming in would be easy, but she wanted something more, a plan, a reckoning. That night, she acted as if nothing had changed. She cooked his favorite meal, smiled at his stories, and even kissed him good night. But inside, she was preparing for her next move. The following weekend, she arranged for John's parents and a few close friends to join them for dinner. Once everyone was seated, she stood up, holding up a printed copy of John's messages. I wanted to share something special tonight, she said, her voice calm but firm. John has found someone new, and I think we should all congratulate him. Silence fell over the room. John turned pale, stammering excuses, but the evidence spoke louder. His family looked at him in shock, and his friends exchanged awkward glances. The weight of his betrayal crashed down on him in full force. Emily took a deep breath, feeling stronger than ever. She had loved him deeply, but she loved herself more. Without another word, she walked out, leaving behind a man who had thrown away something priceless. Sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on with grace, knowing your worth and letting karma do the rest.